So recently I've been playing some Marvel Rivals, as everyone has by now. If you haven't, give it a try. It's a really interesting game. It's like if you're playing Overwatch, but it's actually good. And I've been playing as Venom because I really love that character. And I heard he's pretty cool in the game too, so I tried him out and yeah, he's okay. Like, I prefer playing as Punisher now, but Venom is really good too. And it occurred to me when I was playing that, hey, this guy had like a trilogy of movies that were not really that great from what I remember. I've only seen the first two. By that point, I never seen the third one yet. I mean, yet, like back then when I was playing. I've seen the third one now. And so I thought to myself, hey, why not give those movies a rewatch and watch the third one to see if they're really not as good, if they're really as bad as like everyone keeps saying. And I gotta say, I love Venom. The whole 19 inches. I'm not gonna sit here and like pretend that the movies are some secret masterpieces and nobody understood them but me, and that they're actually so deep that your little brain can't comprehend them. Because they're really not. They're not, that good. But I'd say there are things that can be appreciated and even loved about the trilogy, and that is the characters of Venom, Eddie, and like their bond, their symbiotic bond, their friendship. It sort of seemed to me like throughout the entire trilogy, in each movie the main plot sort of took like a sideline to push the aspect of Eddie and Venom's friendship forward. And I find it really, it doesn't do the movie any favor, but I find it I find it really funny and like sort of interesting. For example, in like the second movie, the entire plot with Carnage and Cletus Cassidy, it's not fun to watch, right? He's not very developed character. The whole thing with like Shriek, neither of them is really developed. But when it switches back to like the struggle Eddie has with Venom right now, them being separated and Venom sort of living on his own, it's so much more fun to watch. I feel like the second movie could have been so much better if, and like Cletus Cassidy had more space in the movie, had more screen time, and his backstory was explored a bit more than just like the letter he wrote to Eddie, because that all seemed like too much exposition for like one scene. And also the elephant of the room, Carnage, he's not really very brutal in the movie. Like they try to convey the idea that he's like this ruthless killer that he's supposed to be, and he kills like the shop owner or whatever in that one scene to use his computer, which he uses the symbiote to hack, and it looks like any hacking scene in any movie you can imagine.
Got any of those internets?
Or where he apparently like kills the priest, which they do not even show. They never show them biting the heads off until like the last movie, and even there it's like very it's alright, but it's not all that memorable. And it's okay in like the last one and the first one. Like honestly, they do not need to be violent, because again, that's not the aspect of the movies that you would enjoy. But I feel like if the second was a bit more violent in that department, with Carnage especially, I feel like the second one could have been a lot better. And it's a shame because Carnage, like, he's literally fucking called Carnage, like, and he does like nothing. He turns into a tornado in one scene. Does he do that in the comics? Why does he turn into a tornado? I never understood it. It seemed so out of pocket. Like, he just looks at the prisoners and then he turns into a tornado. Like, does he hate the prisoners too? Or did he just do that to like show off? I mean, he's just like a sociopath, so I guess it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Just, why a tornado? It would have been a lot more brutal if he like started killing them one by one, since he's like the most brutal Spider-Man villain out there. So yeah, Carnage, and none of the villains really work for me. Like, The villain of the first one, whose name I don't even remember, I just remember that the symbiote was called Riot. He's just like sort of there. He's like your basic guy who wants to take over the world or whatever. Then Carnage I just been through, and Null is just basically there. He doesn't do anything throughout the entire movie in the third one. But as I said, it's not really the important aspect of the movies, interestingly. As you would imagine that the villain would be like one of the most vital parts. No, in a superhero movie, but it's really not. You have more enjoyment just watching Eddie and Venom, going on misadventures and arguing than you have watching any scene with any of the villains. And from technical standpoint, the movies are not really, all that great. The pacing is weird and confusing. The characters are not really fleshed out, except, of course, for the two main characters in, Venom and Eddie. So if you start a trilogy and you go into it with the thought that it's basically a buddy comedy, I think you're gonna have fun, like genuinely. And back when the third movie first came out, there have been a lot of people just poking fun of it, and understandably so. Like, it's not a masterpiece again, but like at the same time, most of the criticism was the movie is what you expect it to be. Like, and is that really a criticism? Like, if it is what you expect it to be, then how's that wrong? Nobody went to the movie expecting it to be the second Citizen Kane, and watching them back to back, I think sort of helps the flow. Like, many people seem to have problems when the third movie came out, that it basically confirmed that Venom and Eddie have only been together for a year, which seemed like, from like real life perspective, strange, since the trilogy was coming out throughout 6 years. But watching them back to back, it sort of makes sense, even though Tom Hardy looks a bit older in the third one. But I think that can be due to the fact that he was basically with Venom and he aged him quite a bit. And watching the third one, you really sort of have the idea that it's the last one. It starts off in a way that it sort of has like this really a great feel of continuity when you think about it. Like, for example, the main plot point is that Venom and Eddie have this thing called the Codex back in like Venom's, I don't know, spine or whatever, in his neck, due to the fact that he saved Eddie from dying once. And it actually happened in the first movie, which is referenced. And I feel like it's kind of like a cool thing to have, like this, almost like a fan service, but like that's the good kind of fan service, because you saw it happen in the movie. And the guy Null wants the Codex for himself because it's the only thing that can free him from the prison for some reason. Do not think about the plot too much, because it's not gonna make too much sense. What does make sense though is that the only way to get rid of the Codex is if one of either the host or the symbiote dies. And both Eddie and Venom, they reject the idea right away, sort of showing that throughout the year that they've been together, they grew to, like each other. They're best friends, basically. Eddie later says it in the movie itself. They're best friends. They sort of cannot really imagine being without one another anymore. And the sense of continuity sort of continues with the fact that Anne is not in the third movie at all. Her arc ended in the second one when, sort of both Venom and Eddie finally sort of accepted the fact that, she doesn't love them anymore. Or she doesn't love Eddie anymore because she never really loved Venom, I guess. And they sort of learned to move on. And it's sort of like really subtle. You don't really notice that she's not there until you start to think about it. And yeah, it's a nice detail, I'd say. Mrs. Chen is still there though, thank God. Even though her inclusion sort of also feels kind of forced. But I suppose that they already knew that it was gonna be the last one, so they decided to go all out. And you can see that they had fun with this movie. It might not be that great, but I genuinely believe like Tom Hardy must have had fun with this movie. Like, because he's, from what I heard, the type of actor that like handpicks his projects, right? Because he's a well-established actor and he's a great actor. He's been in a lot of like great projects. So he must have seen something in Venom that like made him want to do the movie, right? And that made him, you know, come back for the second and the third one. So I'd like to think he was having fun, because with like the other Sony Spider-Man project, like Madam Web or, you know, Craven and Morbius, like it genuinely seemed like nobody was having fun. But like here, at least, like, you know, it seemed like it was fun to do. And I think it's like the ending of the third movie that hits you like a truck. Eddie and Venom basically do decide to sacrifice themselves to get rid of the codex so it doesn't exist anymore. And so at the last moment, Venom throws Eddie out to save him. And he used the door to protect him from like the acid that's gonna kill him and all the aliens sent by Null. And when after all that is done and Eddie wakes up, the first thing he does is he's looking for Venom, saying that he had a dream. He doesn't want to accept that Venom is gone. Until, of course, he comes to his senses and this government agent tells him that, you know, Venom really is gone. He's not coming back. And it all sort of happened so fast. The last scene of the movie is Eddie walking down the street of New York, which is something that again was talked about throughout the entire third movie, of them going to New York and Venom wanting to see the Statue of Liberty. And Eddie is having this sort of like flashbacks and memories of him and Venom together with sad music. And it's kind of corny, but fuck it, I'm here for the corn. Like, god damn it, I did not expect Venom 3 to make me so emotional. And I did not expect to realize that I watched 3 movies of basically just a buddy comedy that I love. I love the friendship between Venom and Eddie. Like, that's the long story short of it. I feel like the trilogy is overhated. Cause like, yeah, it's not, you know, really that good, but like, what would you expect? Cause like, look at, for example, Deadpool and the Wolverine. That movie is not really that great either, and it sort of relies on the nostalgia of the Fox-Men universe and, you know, Hugh Jackman and all the other Marvel Fox projects. But take away all the cameos and take away Hugh Jackman, and what would you be left with? It's not much. I would feel like it's not the best Deadpool movie. It's probably the worst Deadpool movie, actually. Kind of the same with Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, take away, you know, all the established characters from the previous incarnations of Spider-Man, and what are you left with? The only thing outside of like all the cameos and the Spider-Man that we knew before I like about the movie is basically just the ending where Peter, you know, gives up on his identity. And, you know, this is something that I can appreciate about Venom. That trilogy sort of relies on itself. Well, I guess there's the obvious connection to Spider-Man, but like, it doesn't really rely on that, like, at all. It sort of does its own thing, which pisses many people off, because Venom is obviously a character that's very much associated with Spider-Man and cannot really work without him. But like, again, this Venom is not really all that comic book accurate anyway. I mean, he is in the sense that he's goofy and he's funny and, you know, all that, which is all true for like the comic book Venom. But like, the Bond, the character of the symbiote, is not all that comic accurate, because originally the symbiote was not even called Venom. Venom is the bond between Eddie and the symbiote. Eddie and Venom do not really even communicate with each other, almost like at all. It's like they turn into Venom. It's like a completely different character. It's not like one of them takes over the other. But like, the characterization of the movies sort of worked in their favor. So I'm willing to overlook that, and if I'm willing to overlook that, I'm willing to also overlook the connection to Spider-Man. Even though there was the obvious attempt to make Venom appear in No Way Home, apparently, which didn't go anywhere, and thank God it didn't go anywhere, because I think that would be pointless, and I think that would just hurt the character of Venom going to the third movie. Like, it's almost like it never happens, like that switching of the universe and all. It sort of gets brushed under the rug really quickly, and that's a good thing. I didn't like that at all. And in a lot of ways, I think that the Venom trilogy is sort of going to end up like Spider-Man 3. Like 10 years from now or so, people are going to look back at it and, you know, think to themselves that, hey, maybe it's not that bad. Except Spider-Man 3 was never bad. Like, I love that movie too. I don't want to hear that it's bad. It's the greatest movie of all time. I don't care. So I think what I was trying to say throughout this entire video, I hope I was coherent and it made sense. But the thing is that I love Venom.